will always be there in any society. You look at Europe, is the same. You look at Africa, is the same. You look at Latin America, is the same. It is how people handle them. And I think that is now, those are the specificities and the peculiarities of each society. We must have the capacity and the ability to confront the devils that dance before us. And how we deal with them will determine how we mature. If we deal with them in a manner that is sensitive to our differences and our realities, then we are much stronger. I was asked at one time, this thing that you call democracy, what is it? Because that is the be-all, end-all. And I said, the problem that we have, particularly in many African countries, is that we have been made to believe and to define democracy from what I called a jaundiced perspective. What did I mean jaundiced? Jaundiced in the sense that the lenses through which we look at it is from Washington, D.C., from London, from Paris. Let us look at democracy as an environment that allows us to express ourselves and to appreciate that even democracy, although it has its fundamentals, it must be nuanced depending on certain circumstances. And once one does that, one will be able to appreciate that there'll always be differences. And once you appreciate those differences, you'll never run away from the real agenda, which it would appear that human life is, we all desire comfort, however defined. We all desire to be allowed to express ourselves, however defined. We all desire to live in an orderly environment, however defined, but we cannot allow it to be however defined. When you are driving on the road so very comfortably, you know that the only reason is you assume the other person will behave decently. That is why you are driving. You stop because you know when the traffic lights are red, they are telling you not to go. And when they are green, you go. And we make these assumptions because the society is orderly and because people know that they'll be punished. You know, sometimes I think that all of us have certain negative elements. All of us are actually potentially thieves, for example. The only reason why sometimes out of 10 of us, 9 of us will not steal is because, number one, we fear the law, the discomfort of the prison. We are honorable. We don't want to be dishonored in our societies. And for those who believe that there is heaven, like some of us do, we want to go to heaven. And there is an injunction that if you steal, you will not get into heaven. These are necessary in any orderly society. So a long answer to a short question, but necessarily and deliberately long, if only to allow me to philosophize and intellectualize. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Professor LUMUMBA, I understand that you teach humanitarian rights and law. What type of careers do your students take with your wisdom and knowledge?
You know, I'm a lawyer by training. I am trained in human rights, humanitarian law, the law of the sea. And when we went to school, we used to think that a lawyer is the individual who goes to court and defends criminals. I now know better. I now know that that is only possibly for the lawyers who are here. That is possibly not more than 2% of what the law is all about. And you are an engineer. You know, your engineering is underpinned by the law. Before you undertake any engineering work, we've got to have some piece of legislation that defines how you are going to undertake your engineering work. You have planning regulations. You are a politician serving in the county council, and I believe that 90% of the things that you do are underpinned by the law. So the law is ever present in all our affairs. We are talking about vaccination now. Before all these vaccines are out there into the public domain for purposes of being consumed by all of us, there will be a legal regime that deals with all these. So in a nutshell, one of the most agile professions in the world, in my view, is the legal profession. Its agility is amazing. because a lawyer is omnipresent. It simply depends on your own specialization. And this is what we must tell our young men and women. And I think that, I know that in almost all professions, there'll always be an element of the law to which you are exposed for purposes of being aware that when you are conducting yourself, you don't fall foul of the law. So I tell my students, you can't be all you want. You will be an advisor to some government department. You'll be an advisor in the private sector. You will practice law. You will be a legislator. So there is no shortage. And that is why I suspect that if you look at history, the first noble profession, the clergy, one considered to be noble, and I think that nobility was because it was assumed that they were close to God. That is debatable, particularly when I see the clergy now. But so they were considered to be noble. Then the second were the lawmakers, because the law, that's why you say this is a noble profession, and I believe that therefore the law is very important for orderly human society. Thank you.
There are some questions on there. David, what message do you have for some diasporans who consider themselves as not being part of the problem of Africa?
You know, the diaspora, let me talk about Africa. Conservatively, I think there are 400 million people in the diaspora of African origin. 400 million. That is larger than the population of the United States of America. And I want to imagine, and I did this math the other day, that if each one of them earn just $1,000, you can imagine the contribution that they can make to the continent of Africa. The continent of Africa's GDP last year was about $3 trillion United States dollars. That is slightly below the GDP of the state of California. But the continent of Africa has a population of 1.4 billion people. The average income per capita of Africa, I think, is not more than 1,000 United States dollars, and that is even generous. Compare that with the United States of America, anything between 23 and 25,000 United States dollars. And I'm saying this to answer the question that the diaspora can't be the game changer in Africa. The only problem that we have with the African diaspora is that it is not facilitated and it is not organized sufficiently to have that impact. I know in their little segments, they are organized as Nigerians, as Kenyans, as Ghanaians. But if it was possible under the aegis of the African Union, which has indeed recognized the African diaspora as the sixth region of Africa, if they were to be thus organized, the resources that can be marshaled to then have a positive impact in the African continent would be monumental in every sector, whether it's in the commercial sector, whether it's in the agricultural sector, whether it's in the medical sector, whether it's in the area of technology, and in many other sectors. So I hold the view that the diaspora must be organized, must be facilitated, must be enabled, and those who are in charge in Africa must make Africa attractive. Because if it is not made attractive, then people are likely to simply stay where they are anyway. And history has shown that in many countries where the diaspora is strong and organized, then they contribute in a major way. If you look at Philippines, for example, is a country whose diaspora is taken care of by their government, and their contribution to their country is monumental. Ethiopia is also a country in Africa that has done that quite effectively. And I'm quite certain that if you look at the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, and the extent to which they support the state of Israel is amazing. So the diaspora really has a major contribution to make.
One more. That was the only one I had on here.
Thank you. One more question, if anybody is I'll still ask one more. Professor, let me read the professor's answer. Just one second. My young people here, this is not usual. We're not, you didn't have to come here. You listen to you. And you inspire you. So, before I ask you the question, I want to ask one of them to come here and tell me why they're here. You know, why did you decide to follow this? Because this is what I'll ask a question after you answer. What happened? Why do you think that?
I decided to come to get a little more perspective from you, your insight. The professor has told us a lot about you and how you inspired him to teach us and how you motivate him to continue. So I thought it was very important for us to come and support and learn from you and listen to what you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That is from Eritrea and Burkina Faso, a unique combination.
My whole life, the African traditions in my life has influenced me so much. Oh my God. And it's really hard coming from a country where people just don't understand. Sorry. But I do my best personally to be a person who tries and defeats ignorance. Our education system doesn't really teach people anything about what really goes on in the world. If you really think about it, you get very light incensed to, raise how we feel about our country, raise our patriotism. And I love the United States. I love America. I really do. But I think a part of loving your country is identifying those issues and identifying what goes wrong and how to fix it. Because if you're ignoring them, you're just not gonna, history, we teach it so it doesn't repeat itself. And I can slowly see us starting to get to that point where it's gonna repeat itself. So I just think it's really important that in the United States, we get that representation and the perspective of African leaders coming forward and talking about how they want to bring forward their initiative and bring people together. Because if countries and continents can really come together, like you said, and put forward goodwill, it'll create a chain reaction and will spread. So I just think that it's really important that you're here today, and I'm asking you to hear what you have to say because it's something I believe my whole life. And it's always been great to me, and it's a very big part of my culture, and I'm very happy. So thank you for coming.
So, Professor, the reason why I want to go through this is and if you want, I'll set it. So about time we don't educators, don't trust educators. Get in the room outside the class. The class is more than just what you give them facts and repeat this and do and this and that. You see guys here, but feel that it is working. Because you must transform the way you teach. We talked together. Yesterday we spent the whole day in Manchester just stood there in water and just reflecting on things. That makes me feel proud. That part alone makes me feel that my God as an educator is assured. What message you do have for educators?
Thank you.
You have power. You have to be strong. All these students feel they are something in there.
Thank you. Let me, when that young girl sheds tears, it may not be understood, but those who are familiar with what has been happening in Eritrea for the last many years may understand that many young Eritreans are out of the country because there are no opportunities. And sometimes young people such as yourself may want to go back to Asmara, but the question is, does the environment give you the opportunity to blossom? And that is perhaps why the United States of America, despite protestation from a few, it still remains a great country. That it creates an environment and gives young men and women the oxygen that enables them, holding all factors constant, to realize their potential. She also has a parentage from Burkina Faso. And only last month I was listening to an interview, a lady who had been exiled into Burkina Faso from Chad, in the northern part of Burkina Faso. And on the day that they arrived in Burkina Faso, they were raided by a terrorist group, and she was amazing in her response. She said, "It is painful that I move from adversity to adversity, but this is the current state of Africa, but it will not always be like this." That is what I loved about that she still believed that it can never be permanent. And for young people such as yourself, those tears are necessary because they are cathartic. Ultimately, good will come. Which then brings me to the question that you've asked. Education is very empowering. But what do we teach? Formal education is empowering but limited. You can earn all the degrees that you want, and there is nothing wrong with degrees. You can acquire knowledge in a formal setting in a university or at a university, and there is nothing wrong with it. But I have always believed that the formal education is merely the foundation stone that enables you to open your eyes and your minds and to go into your societies, you young ones, and to change the world. At the beginning, I mentioned the great Nigerian author Chinua Achebe. And I believe any one of you here, whether you are of African origin or not, is one of the greatest writers that has ever come out of Africa. And he posed the question through one of his characters in one of his more famous books, and where are the young suckers that will grow when the old bananas die? These are old bananas. You are the young suckers that will grow when the old bananas die. And it depends on how you will change the world. Holding all factors constant, the people on this side, most of us, maximum 40 years will be in heaven. Maximum. That's a morbid thing to say, but that is the reality. And holding all factors constant, it is you who will be present to change. What are you going to teach? From mother to son, from father to daughter. So education is at the very heart of it. And I believe those of you who are here, who are of African origin, never ever forget that there are people in the mother continent who need your contribution. When you run here, and you raise $10,000 and you take it to Masai land, that is, you may not know what it means. You may not know how many lives are saved because there is potable water. You may not know how many young men and women then go to school to acquire knowledge and are thus empowered. You may not know how that improves life expectancy, how that has a positive impact on maternal mortality, how that has a positive impact on the general health of the population in that part of the world. And because that is the last question, and that is why I think that Rotary is a major movement. And when I read the history of Rotary, how many of them who sat somewhere and thought about this idea, How many years ago? Just think about how Rotary started. Many young people who now join the Rotary movement do not know that it was only a few people. How many were they? Four. This is now a worldwide movement. If they were to rise up today and see that Rotary is in every continent of the world, they would be shocked. And that is the power of unity. That is the power of emphasizing the things that unite you. And that is what gives meaning to the four-way test. Four people have now changed the lives of millions. So never ever doubt that your positive contribution can germinate and envelop the whole world. And if you have that in your mind, and I say this almost ad nausea, that never believe that things must happen in your lifetime. I say this, that those who plant the tree will never enjoy the shade of the tree. There is a generation whose only duty is to plant the tree. There is a generation whose only duty is to water the tree. There is a generation whose only duty is to prune the tree. And then there is a generation that enjoys the shade. But I want that generation, when you are enjoying the shade, plant other trees. So that we have to be in this metaphorical tree planting crusade. And it's only in that way that we can change the world. And I think that that is what we are doing in this assembly. That is why we have left the comfort of our offices and our home to be present here. So in those moments when you are alone, when you are in this introspection, when you put your life on the scales, and many of us do, all of us do, don't ever shortchange yourself, particularly if you are Rotarian, because at least Rotarians atone for their sins once every week. You congregate and make a contribution and you atone for your sins. So let us all be in this spirit of atonement, and in that way we serve fellow human beings. God bless.
All right. I would again like to thank Professor PLO Lumumba for speaking. Like to thank everybody for attending. Hopefully everybody feels as I do that we have certainly built goodwill today and have some great ideas for going forward to make better friendships. So have a good afternoon and thank you for coming.
Recording stopped.
This is Mr. President. Yes. Where I come from. But gift from Mr. President here, so that he may remember that I was here. Thank you very much.
I'm going to remember even without
you.
For sure.
Madam President, former President.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, that is you.
You have my title.